Warning. Uncharted planet detected. Scanning. Scanning. Warning. Life form detected. Life form identified. Jeff Yin of Horizon Games. Incoming transmission.
Greetings, travelers, and welcome to Traveller RPG headquarters. You can find our Facebook group by searching our name in the Facebook search tool or find a link in the video description below. Thanks for participating in our third annual Mayday Traveller Day event. It's a day we celebrate Traveller and all its additions and offshoots for all the fun times it's given us around the gaming table with friends and family. I'm your host, Frank Succardi, also known as CyborgPrime, and today I'm happy to introduce Mr. Jeff Yin of Horizon Games. Welcome, Jeff.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. This is your first year doing an interview for Mayday, so thank you very much.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
And you've supported us in the past with some of our prize giveaways, so thank you very much for that.
Of course.
Cool. So tell us about yourself. Where are you from? How old are you? Stuff like that.
Sure. So, my name's Jeff. I'm originally from the San Francisco Bay Area. For those of you who are familiar with that, city of Fremont, home of Christy Yamaguchi. I think that's our claim to fame.
Nice.
Also, the Oakland A's at one point were going to move there, but that didn't end up happening. I am an attorney, at least according to the state of California. I used to do criminal defense litigation, a little bit of public defenders, a little bit on conflicts panels, a little bit my own pay what you can law firm. And then I decided if I was going to be broke and frustrated as an attorney, I could be broke and frustrated pursuing my dreams as a screenwriter. So I moved down to Los Angeles, and that's what I'm doing now. And then, like a lot of people who kind of have a lot of interests and, the privilege to not have circumstances forcing me to kind of practice one occupation, I also do a little bit of game publishing, and that's Horizon Games and the Traveller CCG.
Oh, cool. Tell us about your life growing up. Did you have a favorite sci-fi book or TV show or movie that kind of inspired you in science fiction?
I'm kind of all over the place. So I don't tend to have favorites. I tend to just bounce from thing to thing and get like really into it and explore it, and then move on to the next thing, and then they all just sort of meld into one unholy amalgamation.
All right. So you just like sci-fi in general?
Yeah, I guess it's kind of how there's comparative religion as a study course in college. It's
Sure.
it's kind of like that. I enjoy I enjoy learning about different settings and really like just different ways that people sort of approach the future or the past or an alternate universe, and just thinking out the implications of what's behind the setting, which I think is one of the things that does bring me back to Traveller over and over again. Because one of the things that Traveller setting really does well is it lays out a universe, and there's so many different implications behind how that universe is laid out that people talk about and argue about and have done so for decades, right? I don't know. Probably most of your listeners are familiar with the Citizens of the Imperium message board. But that message board is has been going for decades, and it's all about arguing about the setting and what a universe that actually did exist and had the characteristics of the Traveller OTU, the original Traveller universe. If anyone's not familiar with that abbreviation, what that universe would actually look like as a living, breathing thing. And I just think it's fascinating to be able to, live in someone else's reality for a while, and that's basically what these games allow you to do.
Is there a favorite like sci-fi trope that you like, or maybe style of sci-fi that inspires you over another? Do you like Star Wars or Star Trek better, for instance?
So I guess in that I would have to choose Star Wars. You're supposed to say you love all your children equally, but I think I probably do prefer Star Wars to Star Trek, and I think it does have to do with sort of the rough and unfinished nature of at least the original trilogy, right? When you see Luke on Tatooine or whatever, and they're on sort of this backwater. I do think that I personally prefer a like following a group of people who are sort of on a fringe, and I'm kind of less interested in like Star Trek. It always takes place within the confines of Starfleet, right? This I mean they say they're not a military, but they're essentially military. um and so that kind of strict hierarchy, I guess, doesn't appeal to me as much as, say, Star Wars or Firefly or
Hmm.
just
Kind of
Farscape,
freely
but people.
choosing your adventure,
Exactly.
right? More adventuresome, I suppose one might say.
Yeah, and probably more, with your back against the wall, right? I mean, the Enterprise, of course, they're getting into trouble every week. But the Enterprise, it's the best ship in the Federation, and the Federation is, kind of the big dog in its area of space. And so I think that is kind of different than having your own ship and just trying to have to figure everything out on your own.
Do you have any hobbies aside from gaming?
Yeah, I have just way too many hobbies aside from as I said, part of why I don't have a favorite sort of sci-fi properties. I'm always jumping around to things, and that's true with my hobbies. I like to just try new things constantly. So I guess if you define hobby as something that you stick with, maybe not. Gaming is actually probably the one thing that I've really been doing all my life. But no, I enjoy I enjoy just a range of activities and just trying new things, really. I guess that would be my hobby.
Okay, the hobby of trying new things. Huh? That's good. Do you has gaming always been part of your life? Did you grow up gaming? Did you play card before you got into RPGs? Did you play cards? Did you have family night at home? What's your
So I
history with
did
games?
actually, yeah, I did grow up with gaming because my dad was a gamer, or is a gamer. Uh, and so growing up, I had RPG books around me, and I actually, I got into RPGs before I got into other kinds of games, other than like Monopoly or Yahtzee or whatever. So I grew up with gaming, and I've been doing it for, I'm 41 now, so almost 30 years, I guess, which as a proportion of my life, it's pretty extensive.
Yeah, pretty big section. So, in the spirit of Traveller, I'm asking guests to stat themselves. So, with the traditional Traveller stats of strength, dex, endurance, intellect, education, and social standing, 7 being average and the 15 being max, what would you put your stats at to start with the physical strength, dex, and endurance?
Well, if my Fitbit is any indication, I can't claim any particularly high physical values. I probably have a decent agility, but I'm about 5'5", so my strength isn't too impressive, and my endurance could be better. So probably like 4, 7 or 8, like for agility, and then another 4 or 5 for endurance.
Endurance, yeah.
Definitely, yeah. These are my dump stats:
Okay.
strength and endurance.
All right. And then for your intellect, education, and social standing, which could also be your social skills. So it doesn't have to be necessarily.
Sure, sure. I probably have a decent intellect. I went to law school, so my education is probably excessively high. And then I'm solidly a member of the proletariat, living in California with property being so expensive. So I don't think my social status is going to be warranting an invite to the Imperial Moot.
Okay. Now, during,
And definitely no psionics, despite my best efforts.
are you sure? Or are you just
Yeah,
hiding it?
I'm pretty sure because I have a pretty dismal record in poker.
In Traveler, you get a base of 3 background skills that are basically your like carryover skills from childhood at level 0. You don't have to. They don't have to be from Traveler canon. But what would you say your 3 level 0 background skills from childhood? that you carried over into adulthood are.
Right. So I mean, a lot of games have kind of this background skills concept, and I've always thought, like everyone should pretty much have the same ones, right? Or at least everyone within who grew up within like the same cultural and educational setting. So like everyone should have like drive. Sorry, by everyone, of course I mean sort of like just a normalized American background, right? Like everyone should have drive. Everyone should have some level of art because of things like English class or whatever, and everyone should have like some level of science or so I always thought that everyone should have kind of the same or a similar set of core skills, but if we sort of leave aside formalized education, I probably have some ranks of jack of all trade. For one thing, it's a broken skill in almost every edition. But since I do tend to hop around from thing to thing, I think I probably would have acquired jack of all trades.
Okay.
I did fence for a number of years, so I guess a point of fencing, and then my upbringing was incredibly strict, so maybe like steward or admin or
Admin.
something. Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay. All right. Cool. All right. And then, all right. So you mentioned that you went to law school. Did you pursue any other degrees aside from law degree?
Well, so I did my undergrad at UCSC, UC Santa Cruz, go Slugs. And then I would go on to law school at Santa Clara University.
What was your first major?
So my first major, it's kind of a joke among my college friends. But I actually did not have a major for until my senior year because I was
general degree.
Yeah, I was bouncing around for things, and of course I had my family had things they wanted me to study, and although I did not really I take an easy route, right? So conflict avoidance. So rather than just say no, I don't want to do it, I just kind of sort of do what they want, sort of do what I want.
Gotcha.
So that led me to 3 years of just taking a random group of classes, which didn't add up to any major. So when I got into my senior year, I took legal studies, which a lot of people think is pre-law, but it's actually kind of like the philosophy of law or the development of law. And it ended up really being a lot about the Byzantine Empire.
Interesting.
As it turns out, yeah. And so I do have a legal studies degree, which is in the political science department at UC Santa Cruz. But the reason I took it was the only major that you could complete in 1 year with the classes that I had up to that point.
Okay. Ever served in the military?
I did not. After law school and after trying a couple different, I guess, legal fields, I considered joining the Marine Corps as an attorney. And actually, I did the work to get my physical fitness standards, and took about a year working with them and stuff like that. And then for reasons relating to my student loans, so apparently if you commit a serious felony, like you assault someone, you can get a waiver for it. But if you are in debt, you are a national security
you're a risk
concern. Yeah,
Yep.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So I was not able to get a waiver for my student loans, which were I was behind on my loans at the time. And the irony is quite striking, right? I want to join the Marine Corps so I can pay off my loans. But my loans make me a security risk apparently, so I was not able to do that. And so yeah, I probably for the best. I'm not sure how well I would have done in something that's structured, but then again, maybe it would have given me useful discipline. Who knows?
Who knows?
It's a road not taken.
I was going to ask, in Traveller, sometimes you get drafted. And if you were to get drafted, which branch would you expect or hope to land in? It sounds like Marines.
No, I would totally hope for the Scouts.
Oh, Scouts, okay.
Yeah, the Scouts, they've always been my favorite. Of course, I probably would get drafted into the Army and never get an extra assignment or whatever. And then in my last tour, I'd get hurt and die on the operating table.
Just by luck.
It's when I was a kid, I used to play the Traveller video game or
Uh-huh.
the computer game,
Yeah.
and I didn't actually play the
The
computer game so much as I just
Zodani conspiracy.
yeah, the
Mhm.
Donnie Conspiracy. And I actually never really got that far into the game just because I didn't end up finding the gameplay all that interesting, but I loved rolling up characters and
Uh-huh.
seeing how many tours I could take before I got kicked out or died.
I ran it on my Atari 1040, and it had a bug where every time you bought Battle Dress, it crashed. So I never finished the game. I got mad.
Yeah, my goal was always to leave with as many of the neural pistols as I could.
So, tell me, how did you get into role-playing gaming from traditional games to role-playing games? What was that transition? How did you find out about role-playing games? What were your first experiences with role-playing games?
Sure. So I touched on this a little bit in that, my dad, he's a first generation gamer. He came up in, sort of the creation of RPGs. He was playing at that time. So, like Chainmail and Traveller and RuneQuest, stuff like that. He used to play at this old game store in San Jose called the Bandersnatch. I'm sure it's long gone by now. I don't think it was around even when I was coming up. So, but yeah, he used to play a RuneQuest campaign there with one of the authors of RuneQuest, or one of the contributors of RuneQuest. And he played Traveller and D&D and stuff, and so that's how I got into it. At first, I was I'd just be like a little henchman in because my dad would run the games at our house, and I would just run one of the party's little henchmen dudes. And then as I got older, I would play my own character.
Uh-huh. Did you have a favorite character class?
So the game that we played most commonly was RuneQuest.
Okay.
And RuneQuest, at least at that time, I know there's probably been subsequent editions, so I don't know how it plays now. But at the time, the edition of RuneQuest was classless. It was a skill-based
Skill-based.
system.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so you didn't really have a class, and unlike say D&D where you'd have like a fighter or a mage or whatever, in RuneQuest, everyone could fight, everyone could cast magic. It was actually really interesting because the world of RuneQuest, Glorantha, it's very rich, and sort of the defining aspect of your character in that game is your cult, what your religion is.
Okay.
Which obviously has a lot of implications for role playing, but also is quite determinative in terms of mechanics. Like, it affects what spells you had access to, it affects what kind of weapons you want to use, and so on and so forth.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I didn't really have a favorite.
Did you have a
favorite
favorite
class?
configuration?
Yeah, so
Okay.
my like kind of first character coming up, he worshipped the god Yamolio, the son of the sun, and the spear and the bow were his sacred weapons. So yeah, that was my character. I was I think my character's name was Stone Spear, because that's the kind of name you give him when you're like 11.
Yeah.
And yeah, he just went around stabbing people with his spear for the glory of Yamolio.
What was it that got you? What was it about RPGs that got you hooked?
So I think it kind of goes back to this concept of just getting to live in the universe, right? So for me, I really enjoy reading setting books for RPGs, even games I'm never going to play,
Mm-hmm.
because it's a lot like an episode of Star Trek where they go to a new planet and they meet people, and this planet, everyone on this planet, they do things in a way that's completely alien to you, and you just kind of get to think about how it would be to live in that world, and that's also one of the things that has really kind of driven my interest in history, because there are cultures, even cultures that we think that we're quite familiar with, like ancient Greece, that view things in a way that would be entirely alien and in many ways just completely unacceptable to us. And just getting to kind of think about what it must have been like to live in that. To me, that's just an amazing, an amazing opportunity.
When did you know you were hooked on role-playing games?
I guess it was pretty early on, because I remember the D&D first edition books, they had one set of original covers. And I remember I was reading my dad's books and getting them kind of messed up. So he bought me my own set, and the covers were different. So at one point in the late 80s or very early 90s, they had come out with a different set of covers for the first edition D&D books. And those were like my books, the first ones that were kind of my RPG books. And I guess ever since then.
Been hooked.
Yeah.
And so, do you prefer to be the GM or the player?
I have this theory that GMs run the game, the kind of game that they would like to play in. So if I could clone myself and play in the games I run, that would be my preference. But because I can't do that, and because I want things, my way, or I want to kind of explore the things I want to explore, or like at least frame the setting the way I want to frame it. I prefer to be the GM, and it's been quite a while since I've been a player in a consistent campaign. I'll play one shots quite happily, like at conventions when that used to be a thing.
Sure.
Quite happily play one shots. But if it's a campaign, like I find I pretty much have to be the GM to really enjoy myself.
What is it about being the GM that you like? Do you enjoy the creative process of doing all the prep and stuff, or making the setting up? What is it that what's the appeal to you?
I think it's making the setting, it's playing the NPCs, it's maybe setting a stage or exploring something in the universe that's interesting to me and seeing how the players react to it. I also I tend to gravitate towards RPG titles that really have quite an involved setting, right? I don't want to slag off D&D or any game. Every game is fantastic in its own way, but I'm kind of less interested in D&D, which is sort of more generalized, and in the rule books at least, it's kind of presented almost in an attritional standpoint, right? Like if you actually read about what challenge ratings mean, they explain it in an attritional standpoint. A challenge rating below the party should use this much resources, equal to the party should use this much, above the party should use this much, and to me, that's just such a dreary way to think about these games, and so I tend to I tend to want to play in settings that really kind of interest me personally.
What got you? Do you remember your first Traveller game? What got you into Traveller?
I do. So the first Traveller setting that was really kind of mine was Traveller the New Era. I had played in, I think, a Traveller game before, with my dad's group, again, just being like their little minion or like their little robot or something like that. Because what are you gonna do when you're a kid?
Right.
But no,
Hey kid, you
Traveller.
can be Tweaky.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's like, let's send the droid out. Yeah, sure, I'll just throw some dice and die. But Traveller the New Era, I think it came out in the early 90s, like 93 or 94. And I remember just being quite interested in it. I've always been drawn to sort of dystopian or apocalyptic themes. Again, because I think it's this sense of so much of who we think we are, or the values that we hold come from society, but what happens when that gets stripped away? That's always been and if you watch things like The Walking Dead or whatever, it just all becomes really cliche where everyone just becomes murderers or victims or whatever. But I think the reality is actually probably a lot more complicated. And I remember Hard Times, the Mega Traveller supplement.
Yep.
It kind of chronicles
You're the second person to mention it today.
Yeah, I think Hard Times is one of the most unappreciated Traveller products. And there's an art piece on one of the pages of this mother and her child she's at an ATM machine, and she's trying to get money, and the ATM doesn't work anymore because the economy doesn't work anymore. And I think just so much is said in that image. And of course, as a kid reading these books, I didn't understand all the implications of these things. But when I look at that, I understand why a lot of people do not, a lot of Traveller fans, why they have such a visceral reaction to Mega Traveller and to Traveller the New Era. But for me, those are the Traveller editions that I enjoy the most. And it's because of this like small scale, like the technology in Traveller is thousands of years old, right? Like anti-gravity has been around for Traveller residents as long as we've had the wheel. Right. In reality, right? So this would be something that they rely on without thinking about it.
Right.
And now all of a sudden your Roomba is trying to murder you.
Right.
Like that would just be so extremely traumatic. It would just shatter everything that they have believed in. Um, and yeah, just thinking through the implications of that is uh, provide me with just untold hours of enjoyment.
Yes,
Although that sounds pretty sadistic, but
no, it
I
was
mean, purely like in an intellectual sense.
we had our travelers have a cryo sleep accident, and that's how they ended up in the new era.
Yeah, I've run a campaign in a similar way too, and I think that actually is a really good way to introduce people who do play Traveller to the new era.
Hmm.
Because then it's kind of less about virus, it's less about blowing up everything they've known, and it's more just about survival at the moment. And then as they as they expand further into the universe, they kind of learn really everything that's gone on. And for people who are really willing to play their characters, really willing to role play what that means, it's pretty interesting, I think, or at least has the potential to be.
We've always tried to keep up on whatever the latest edition was, and so, but we're also attached to our characters, so we found ways to carry them forward. And I was like, well, a virus infected the ship before you knew what virus was, and it malfunctioned your cryopods, and now you woke up 100 years later or whatever, and now you're fully in the new era.
Yeah,
So it worked out all right.
Yeah, no, I back again when conventions were a thing. I run a game at some of the local conventions called the Last Flight of the Riant Shield. The Riant Shield is one of the bizarre names of an Azanti High Lightning class ship.
Okay.
And the players start that game. It's a one shot, it's a convention game, but the players start the game in the same way, in the pitch black, coming out of a cryo tube, which I understand is a sci-fi trope, but it's a good one. It's why we keep going back to it.
It's the way Pandorum starts. It's the way Dark Matter starts. Great series.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right?
Yeah, right. I think players come to expect certain tropes, and but mixing them up and making them surprising is what makes it not cliche.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So what drew you to Traveller, made you stay in Traveller?
I think for me it was the scale of the universe that really drew me to it, or at least it kept me there, right? So when I was really getting into Traveller, as I said, it was about the new era, and like just the scale of the Third Imperium, and really chartered space. To me, that was pretty interesting, because most of the other games that I'd played at that time, it's like in D&D, you start out in a bar and you meet your friends, and then you go, you go adventure, you kill some orcs, you get some treasure or whatever. But in Traveller, they spend a lot of time detailing things that your character, like, it would never matter to your character, right? Because the Imperium is vast, travel is slow. There's alien races that you'll probably never meet, or other human political entities you'll never meet. But just the fact that like there was just so much material to dive into, I think that's probably what hooked me and then kept me going.
There is a tremendous amount of material and a lot of player generated stuff out there too, in addition to commercial material.
Yeah. And also I remember when Traveller New Era first came out, inside the box was this like play by mail thing, which sounds so quaint now. But it was a much larger scale. Like, you were the leader of a planet, and you were trying to like get your planet back to the stars. And so it was something my dad and I signed up for. I don't think it was administered very well, because I don't recall it lasting that long. But we did do that, and that was pretty interesting too.
How did that work?
So I was probably too young to really remember how the system worked, so my planet was probably pretty poorly administered.
I see.
But anyone who has the Traveller New Era box, they might still be able to find the ad for it, which would explain it better than I think I could at this point.
A lot of people like play by mail. I've never done it, so I'm not really sure what's so great about it. But I guess it's just that if you have a busy schedule, you can take your turns at a sync and don't have to really meet up with people, I guess, or have a time sync with other people.
Right, and it also, you know, wasn't an RPG in sort of in the traditional format because you weren't a character. You were, you know, it was about your planet, right? You were trying to improve your planet, make
Gotcha.
it better, expand out and conquer other planets or whatever you were trying to do. And I think those kinds of games do work very well in a remote sense because you know, the game master has to administer the state of the universe, and you go out and you meet this planet, and then the game master has sufficient time to kind of work out how this planet wants to respond to you and, oh yeah, everyone else who's doing stuff. So I think for those kinds of games, which yeah, I did run sort of a similar game for a while, which then fell apart because, you know, these things, they always just fall apart because of scheduling ultimately.
Sure.
But yeah, I think if you're going to administer things on a planet-wide scale, it probably is best to do remotely, where the GM can take as much time as they want with each person's thing. It's not like you're sitting at a table while the other 3 or 4 or 5 people just sit there tapping their thumbs while the GM deals with your diplomatic mission to Alderaan.
Do you have a favorite Traveller career?
Well, I guess that would be Scout.
Okay.
Yeah, just the idea of the Scouts and that little dinosaur, you know, the Scout logo.
Yeah, the like multi-legged dinosaur guy.
Yeah,
like Pony
I mean,
Express.
I remember when I was rolling up my first Traveller character. You know, it was like a classic Traveller character because that's what my dad's group played. And just seeing, you know, the Scouts, they didn't have a rank. You could get a ship at the end of your at the end of your service. It's just everything about the Scouts just seemed so much cooler than like being a grunt in the army, which, you know, again, I have nothing but that much respect for the army. But you know, getting your own ship, like, that was just way too cool to pass up.
Mm-hmm. Technically a loner, but people still treated them as their own ship.
Yeah. I guess if the Scouts want their ship back, they can come find me.
I wonder how many Scouts, like, you know, skip out with their Scout ship. Do you have an all-time favorite story about something that happened in the Traveller game?
An all-time favorite story. Well, so I guess, I mean, this is less of a story in the sense that it's like narratively cohesive or whatever, but it's kind of this inside joke among my gaming group that somehow in the Sci-Fi games, the most primitive skill checks come up. Like, you know, we live in this advanced future. Why do we have to make this blacksmithing check or whatever? So you know, I have a friend who, he kind of likes to intentionally play weak characters, right? Like, he doesn't want to be the badass. He wants to play things that are strange, and that's his shtick, right? I mean, he'd probably deny that he does it intentionally, but he does it intentionally. And so for the last couple of other Sci-Fi games that we had played, he had made a character who kind of was from backwaters or whatever, you know, whatever that meant for that setting. But when it came time for us to switch to Traveller again, he was the ship pilot. You know, no one else wanted to be a pilot, and so he just was like, all right, well, whatever, I'll be the pilot. And so they set in a new era. They go to this planet, and the domes are failing, and the hydroponics are failing. And so if he had the farming skills he normally would have had, he could have probably saved the planet.
No. We were making some similar jokes. We were watching Lost in Space, and there was a part where the kids had to repair the chariot, and we were joking about kids these days, they don't know how to change a tire. Yes, I do. Bleep bloop. And then it does it by itself. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, what kind of gaming advice would you give to a brand new Traveller player? Let's say you're at a game store and you see some kids sit down, or people, adults, whatever, sit down with a new set of Traveller books, and they're trying to figure out, you know, what is this thing all about? What's your sage advice for the new player?
Geez, that's a hard one because I generally don't like dispensing advice because I don't like being responsible for the consequences. And almost, you know, almost everyone who provides advice does become responsible for the consequences. So I guess, my advice for games in general
You're
is
anonymous. You
to
can slip out of the store. You drop this
it,
advice.
it's to get started in playing as soon as possible. Like it's not to get hung up on the rules. It's not to get hung up on the setting. You roll up your characters and you just start, and you're gonna make mistakes or do things that turn out to be stupid, or do things that ultimately, maybe if you learned more about it, you would have preferred to have done them differently. But I think for these games are a lot of work to play in and to run, and so I think, I think a lot of campaigns just die on the ground, and so I guess my advice would just be to just get started and push through.
Take risks.
Yeah, that would be another thing, right? Yeah. I once saw this meme that said, D&D is 30 minutes about 30 minutes arguing about the plan and then not following the plan.
Right.
Um, and I would say that's, do big things, right? Like play the game like you're in a movie, because when you do big things and interesting things happen, like whether you succeed or fail, that drives the game. And I think, especially players who are success oriented or goal oriented, and you do need those players to really drive the story forward, because otherwise it's like, oh yeah, I don't care if I deliver these goods on time, I'll just go to the space casino or whatever. And that's fine. You do also need those players, but you really, for goal oriented players, I think the specter of failure can sometimes impede them, and really I think you need to make the big choice when you play these games.
I think you're right. I've noticed a lot of time I GM a lot, and players won't even, if they don't have the skill, they will not risk it, even if they have a bonus for their governing stat. They're risk averse, and they won't even try to shoot a gun if they don't have gun, or if they only have it at 0, even if they have a bonus because of dex.
Right.
It's kind of weird.
Yeah, and if you think about movies, right, the stuff that happens in a movie is because people are failing.
Right.
The plot for most RPG game sessions, whether you're talking about, say, like a pre-designed module or just an adventure that you make on your own, like at least in my experience, the actual plot of the story that I've concocted, like if a player could go straight from A to B, they could finish it in like an hour, right? So it's really the players kind of like fumbling about, making their own complications or following up on the things that they care about that provide the game.
Right, right. And so what kind of advice would you give a new Traveller referee?
First, find out what you love about the setting and try to make the game about that. Now, your players are not going to let you make the game about anything. So, unless you are just like railroading the heck out of them, I don't think you have to be worried about, are my players going to be interested in that, right? Like if you are really interested in the nobility, and you make the NPC, the job is like some count who hires them, and you got to like steal the crown from some other count or whatever. Like if you're into the nobility, frame the game around the nobility. If you are into the Solomani, set the game in Solomani space. Find what it is that you love about the setting, because that's really going to nourish and sustain you through the game. Because running these games takes a lot of work, whether you do a ton of prep or, for me, I actually do not do a lot of prep. I'm mostly kind of an off the cuff GM. I'll have an idea of kind of what this session is going to be about.
Maybe some bullets. Bulleted
yeah,
lists.
Exactly.
Okay.
But I really do just kind of so I guess I call it the wing commander theory of GMing. When I was a kid, there was a series of space flight simulator games called Wing Commander.
Fighting against the Kilrathi.
Yeah, exactly. And the way that game worked is, if you flew your mission and you succeeded in your mission, the entire war was going more favorably for your side. And if you lost, the entire war was going badly. And it's not just because you lost your mission, but like just the universe, like the progression of events got worse or better, depending on, your particular result. And so I GM in that way. Like my players' consequences have kind of an outsized influence on the whole universe.
Right.
and so I guess this kind of might conflict with this thing I said earlier about don't worry so much about the results, since I do make the results quite significant. But really, what that does, even when players fail, is it drives the story of the world forward at the same time that the players' own stories are going forward. And it's worked for me. I mean, I can't guarantee it's going to work for everyone or be everyone's cup of tea. But yeah, just find what you love about the setting, find ways to kind of tie that into what the players are doing so that you stay mentally interested. And then just, have fun. Don't get hung up on the rules. This is also something. Recruit people who don't cause drama. Because it's a game. It's supposed to be fun. It's just it's not. The occasional conflict is going to come up, but if your people are like spending time just really fighting with each other and not like characters, but just like really fighting with each other,
Yeah.
something's got to go.
Yeah, I've had games where there were people of opposing political beliefs, and they would troll each other like crazy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like it caused troubles at the table.
Yeah, I mean it's a game, right? And I think these games are so specific that it can be tough to find a group who's looking for the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And
Or
that
be able
might
to put
take
those mundane things aside and enjoy Traveller while we're here together playing.
Right. Yeah.
So you see these people at the game store now, they're looking at the central supply catalog and they're like, what do I even need to buy? What do I, what's your advice for what 3 items would you suggest be in every traveler's essential backpack?
Geez. So I do not really know the current product range.
No,
Maybe
it doesn't
well
have to
enough.
be. Doesn't have to be Traveller canon. Just
okay,
what would you, as a player, as a player in the world of Traveller, want to make sure you have in your backpack? It could be a pack of matches. Could be a flashlight. Could be a plasma gun. I mean, it could be stuff from canon and from actual Traveller, or it could just be shoelaces. I don't know, whatever.
Well, so I do think everyone does need a way to defend themselves. Making a helpless character can be interesting, but some people just don't really appreciate the drag. So a way to defend yourself, a translator. I guess now that I think about it, I guess I do kind of have a favorite gaming story because when I was in high school and I was running, my knockoff, homebrew D&D game, the players were fighting against this undead plague, and they cross a continent to go to this sunken library that's supposed to have the book that can cast a spell to undo the undead plague. Except it turns out none of them bothered to take the skill to learn how to read. So after they finally got there, after like 6 months of real life game shirts, then they had to go find someone who was still alive who could read. That was actually pretty amusing for me.
That is.
Personally, it was pretty frustrating for them. They were not happy with me.
If we open the book, it's just gobbledygook because you don't read.
So yeah, like an auto translator, it would definitely be like way up there.
Okay.
And then something with an encyclopedia on it, right? Like
like a pocket computer or something.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Like something that can tell you how you can set a broken bone, right? Oh, you don't have any medical skill, but you've got this thing that can tell you, can I make a roll with with a bonus or less of a penalty or something.
Mm-hmm.
Just the ability, I think, to be flexible. So anything that you're going to carry along that can resolve unexpected issues, that would be my suggestion.
All right, that's all good equipment, all good stuff.
Of course, if you could have a Zodani Warbot, that would also be good to have.
What if you had a friend or a family member come to you and say, hey, I'm really interested in Traveller, how do I get started? What would your answer be?
So my answer would be to now there's just a lot of really good collective resources, which wasn't true even like maybe 5 or 10 years ago. Like Facebook has become a great place to find a game. There's some great Facebook groups. The Citizens of the Imperium forums. There's the Traveller Discord. There's a Mongoose forums. There's our own Horizon Games forums. Just find a place where other people who love Traveller congregate, and you'll kind of, I think, pretty quickly figure out if what they're talking about is something that you want to be a part of.
All right. So you do customizable card games over there at Horizon Games. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about that? How did you get started in game design? Why did you decide to do cards?
Sure. So, as everyone who's kind of GM'd games for a long time can probably relate to, at some point after playing D&D for a while, I just slowly started modifying it more and more and more, and until eventually it kind of became a different animal. And I think probably most game masters do homebrew a system, or every rule system, in fact, to a certain extent, does require some modification, because no set of rules can really govern everything that's going to happen in a game. And to me, that's really what makes these tabletop RPGs fun. It's what makes me come back to them. It's what makes them better than like a Baldur's Gate or a Final Fantasy. These computer RPGs. It's just you can do anything you want in them, right?
Mm-hmm.
From like a hobby aspect, I guess I've been sort of quote unquote game designing for a really long time. I play a fair amount of trading card games. It's really hard to find a single term that will identify them all, because like there's Magic, which is a collectible card game because the cards come in rarities. The Fantasy Flight, theirs comes in fixed sets. They call them a living card game. At Horizon, we call our own a customizable card game because it also comes in fixed sets, so you don't what you get isn't random. But the name trading card game has kind of emerged as sort of an umbrella for all of these sorts of games. And for me, deck creation, it creates a lot of variability. There's an opportunity to be creative. You can make your deck kind of about the thing that you like. You can you can decide that you like silly things and you're gonna try it, right? Like I want every one of my characters to have I don't know, like a brown jacket. So I'm going to try to use all the art that has a character in a brown jacket. Like you can
Gotcha.
do silly things like that
Right. Or maybe
in a card game.
all robot crew or something.
Yeah, all robot crew, right? Like you can, and these sort of self-imposed restraints are a way to keep games fresh for you that you've played for. I played Magic for like 20, 25 years, and I still come back to it because there's just a lot of creativity in deck building. So that since I've played it for a long time, it was just kind of natural to want to make one.
And so, what gave you the idea to make a Traveller style game?
I've liked the setting for a really long time, and I've wanted to make a game for a really long time. So those two things just, I guess, kind of collided in a fortuitous manner. But also, one of the card games I really enjoy, Vampire: The Eternal Struggle, is originally called Jihad. It had been out of print for a while, and it has a depth to it that few of these card games can really match. And I think I was just kind of missing that experience in cards when I went to go make this game.
And so, tell us a little bit about the game itself. Well, we'll get to that in a minute. Is this your first Traveller licensed or brand product that you've made?
Yeah, it is. Or at least the first one finished. I've been working on a game, like a war game to model the rebellion, for like a decade or something, and haven't quite cracked that nut yet. But it's the first thing I finished.
Oh, cool. And when how long ago did you create the Traveller Customizable Card? When was it first published?
I think our Kickstarter was in like 2016.
Okay.
And then I think the cards rolled out to people like in early 2018, maybe. I could be off on the dates, but that's roughly when I think things happened.
So tell us more about the card game. Like, how does it work? Like, you don't have to tell us like all the rules, but like generally speaking, what's the goal? What's the mechanic? How does it go?
Sure. So the setting is quite small. It's quite small scale, right? You are the captain of a small ship. Our largest ship is the broadsword at 800 tons. So it's kind of supposed to model an RPG campaign. You play the captain. You have a ship. I think we have like 7 or 8 ships right now. And they're all kind of iconic ships from the Traveller universe. You know, the Beowulf, the Empress Marava, you know, the Subsized Merchant, you know, like the Gazelle. So we've got 7 or 8 of them. Each ship has stats that are derived from its values in the Traveller RPG. You know, they give you different capabilities, kind of represents what your ship is good at, like if it hauls cargo, if it hauls passengers or whatever. If it does mercenary work, stuff like that. Every ship will have its own ability, and every ship has a certain number of slots for you to upgrade it, and a certain amount of crew it can hold, and then crew can have gear, and crew can, you know, crew has skills, and they can do these heroic actions, and so you know, you're just you're trying to make your way through the galaxy, paying off your ship and avoiding bankruptcy. And if you are kind of black of heart, you can also turn to piracy to drive your opponent to bankruptcy.
That's awesome. And so, how do the expansion packs work? Do they give you like new crew or new gear for your ship, like new turrets and weapons and things, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we have like 3 categories of product. We have a starter set, which comes with 2 ship decks, the Beowulf and the Scout, and then a deck of additional cards that you can use to customize your deck, so that, you know, right off the gate, you're not forced to play the same decks every time. And then we also sell ship decks, so that would be a ship and then 20 contract cards, because in our game, you, to get victory points, you like do contracts and then you get paid off, and when you reach a certain number of victory points, you've paid off your ship and won the game.
Gotcha.
Every ship comes with everything you would need to play, or every ship deck comes with everything you would need to play right out the box. Comes with a ship, comes with 20 adventure cards, those are the contracts, and then 60 captain's cards, and those are going to be like your crew and your gear and your weapons and whatever else.
And those are
We
the
also,
things that help you accomplish the contracts?
yeah, that's
Okay.
right. Because every contract will require some capabilities. A capability is what your ship is good at, like if it can haul cargo, if it can take passengers, so on and so forth. And then contracts will also frequently require skills, and skills come from your crew. Yeah, so there's the ship decks. Then there's also expansion packs, and these are 60 cards, 3 copies each of 20 cards. Because in our game, you can have a max of 3 copies of any card in your
Okay.
ship or in your deck. So at 3 copies, you get what's called a play set in kind of trading card game parlance.
Okay.
And so and these expansion packs tend to be themed. So we have Trouble on the Mains, which is like about piracy and fighting, and then we have Aliens of the Imperium, which, you know, is about aliens, and Central Supply Catalog is another one, right? So we have 4 expansion packs, and then I think we have 4 ship decks, and then we have a couple of print on demand mini ship packs. So that's kind of how we have structured the products. And I think it's a pretty convenient way to get into the game.
It sounds really cool. You hold a hand of cards, certain number of cards, and is there a discard pile and draw decks and all that stuff? Or
Yeah, yeah, there's all that stuff. So an interesting feature about our game, which if you're familiar with trading card games like Magic, especially,
not so.
then
I
this will
haven't
make
played Magic much, but I have played the Star Trek card game, the Mythos Call of Cthulhu card game, and which I really love. And those are the only ones I can think of off the top of my head.
Sure. I mean, well, there are a lot of them. But so a defining aspect of a lot of these card games is that you have to kind of ramp
Netrunner.
up.
Sorry.
Netrunner. Okay. Yeah. And so a lot of these trading card games, you kind of have to build up your resource base, and so you're able to play better and better cards as the game goes on.
Gotcha.
In our game, every card is also money, and you can spend money just from the top of your deck. So you can play your most expensive cards from the beginning, and if you run out of deck, you go bankrupt, you lose. In a game like Magic, you know, you put down 1 land every turn, and as you get more land, you generate more mana, and more mana allows you to cast bigger spells. In our game, there isn't that sort of build up period to our game. You're limited primarily in sort of what you draw and how many cards you feel like you want to buy. And so it's kind of faster paced. in that sense, and that is quite a different dynamic than most trading card games.
I love the artwork, man. The covers of all the boxes I was perusing on your website is beautiful art.
Thank you. We so during the Kickstarter, we made the conscious effort not to create additional bottlenecks by having just one artist, and we also kind of realized that gamers are very opinionated people, and so no single art style was going to satisfy everyone, and we ended up just commissioning art from a wide range of artists. I think currently to date we have over 50 contributing artists.
Wow.
And yeah, on the whole, we're very satisfied with the way the art has turned out. Especially because we would love to pay $1,000 a card like Magic the Gathering can, but but that's really not a maybe one day. But right now that's not really our situation. So I think our art does stand up really well in among trading card games generally, and I think we've done it with probably a more modest budget than the bigger game companies have.
What's your personal favorite type of content to produce? Do you like to write modules or write new game mechanics or come up with new ideas for your card game? Or if you could spend all day doing your favorite thing, game wise, content production wise, what would that be?
I guess it would be making NPCs or making not like a whole setting necessarily, although I do have a couple of homebrew settings, but kind of making like an NPC and the environment in which they live and interact, which I guess is pretty much the same as rolling up characters, but when you make NPCs and you kind of give them a backstory and some goals of their own, you almost get to play the game at that point in your mind, just by figure out what this person's like, what they want, and what opposes them. I mean, that's almost that's almost an RPG session.
Right. Yeah. Well, you make them come alive in your imagination. So that's detailing them out like that, and then imagining their adventures and their motivations. And like you say, you could play out a whole little scenario in your head just about this one person that you made up.
Yeah. So I mean, that's probably my favorite gaming activity. And while I run a weekly game group, so I get to play. I know there are people who maybe play several nights a week. For me, that would probably be kind of draining. But my interest in games probably exceeds my capacity to play them, either from a practical standpoint, how much time I have, or just from a mental energy standpoint. So when I want to indulge in my hobby, but in a manner that maybe isn't as mentally demanding, that's one way to do it.
So getting back to the card game real fast, what was the biggest hurdle that you had to overcome? What aspect of the production are you most proud of?
So the biggest hurdle, and which will also kind of dovetail into kind of my biggest regret about the game, or something I wish we had done better.
Okay.
The difficulty we had was that we loved the setting, and so we wanted to detail a lot of things about the Traveller universe, right? So like for the crew, like your species should matter, your skills should matter. Like there's a whole bunch of just iconic pieces of Traveller gear. There's the ships. We wanted the ships to be quite distinctive. The thing is, everything that you want to detail in a card game has to become a mechanic. So we ended up making a game. So we wanted a game that was going to be like very fast paced and very beginner friendly. But since everyone who was doing the development on this game, we all had a lot of CCG, we had a lot of card game experience, and we were all pretty familiar with Traveller. We ended up making a game that was pretty deep. I think if you are a fan of these kinds of card games, there's a lot in Traveller for you. It plays differently than most other card games, and I think it really offers like a very dynamic card game experience. But the new player experience is not as seamless as we would like. It is a bit rough to learn the game. Part of that also is so in order partially to save card text and also partially to make the rules resolve cleaner. So in card games, a lot of the issue that comes up with rules is text, right? How do you interpret the text of the cards? So we replace a lot of the text with symbols. If you have ever played the game Race for the Galaxy, our card game gets compared to Race for the Galaxy quite often because of its reliance on icons. And so, for instance, crew cards, right? Instead of saying crew card, we have a little symbol for crew card, and every crew card has that symbol in the corner. And then if card text on a card references a crew card, instead of writing out crew card, we just have that symbol. And because we knew the words crew card would never appear in the game, in the rulebook, we also use that symbol. Now, the first time we introduce a symbol, we also have like in parentheses crew card. But I think our use of that iconography in that manner has sort of raised the barrier to entry for a lot of people. So it's not the easiest game to learn. The new player experience is definitely, it falls short of what we had hoped to create. But I do think that, looking back, it was almost maybe inevitable given, the kind of people that we were and what we were looking for from a game.
Right.
And we probably should have, we definitely should have run it past people who had no experience with card games more than we did. We tested out with ourselves and with our game group, and we put out like a playtest call, but
it was
it is
mainly
pretty hard
people
to
who were already experienced
exactly
with card games and knew what the terminology was.
exactly.
Instance, right?
So I think it's a good game. I think it's a very solid game. Mechanically, it works. But I understand the criticism that the new player experience is not as good as it could be, and that's on me. That's on us. We definitely could have done a better job about that.
Do you have a how to play video?
So we do have a how to play video. You can find it pretty easily, I think, on our website or on Board Game Geek, and I think probably also on our Facebook. We've got videos. There's some fans that have made some really nice content to try to make the experience a bit easier for other people. We don't have a huge community or necessarily the most active community, but there's some really great people who have really stepped up to support the game, and we appreciate that. And ultimately, like I said, I don't think anyone really gets into gaming as an industry to get rich, right? Except for D&D, most companies that are successful, fairly modestly successful. And for us, as long as we're enjoying what we're doing and not going bankrupt doing it, I think for the near term, that's enough for us.
That's great. Where can people find this? How do I purchase a copy?
So you can. So the first thing we always suggest, because our game, the Traveller Customizable Card Game, it's distributed by PSI, Publish Servicing International. It's the same distributor who distributes for Mark Miller for Future Enterprises.
Mm-hmm.
So our first suggestion is always just to see if your friendly local game store or retailer can order it through regular distribution.
Like Chessex or whoever big distributor is.
Yeah, exactly. Because we are always about supporting brick and mortar stores. I buy my stuff from brick and mortar stores. Yeah, you can get it cheaper other places, but I think you should pay where you play.
Sure.
Now, it's none of my business where other people buy stuff or how they spend their money. But I really think that you are doing the community a favor and yourself a favor ultimately, because you also benefit from that community when you support your local game store. So the first place we always point people to is see if your local game store can order it from a distributor, because it's distributed through mainstream gaming retailers. But if they can't or don't want to or don't have a local game store, you can buy it direct through our website. If you do a Google search for the Traveller CCG, you can find our products on Amazon from other sellers, other online retailers. Like it's on Walmart and stuff like that. All of these big box retailers who also have online stores, they're willing to sell you pretty much anything that they can buy through standard distribution themselves. So, and if all that fails, or if you want to support us directly, because of course, our margins are best when people buy from us directly, because there's no cut to share with the distributor, right?
Sure.
So if you do want to support us directly, you can also buy them off our web store.
What's the address?
It's travellerccg.com.
Easy to remember.
Yep, you can find our forums. The rule book is available to download for free. We got our main site, just some articles kind of about the game, some content about the game. We have a roster of artists, which I do need to actually update. But it shows, I guess, some example cards. Because each artist will have like a small image of one of the cards that they drew next to their name. Which, if you do like the work of any of our artists in particular, on our website, there's a link to their profile. You can go there. I'm sure they'd be happy to sell you prints if you'd like the specific image in our card. These are all freelance artists. They're probably open for commissions. So if you want a drawing of your own character, I'm sure they'd love to hear from you.
Hey, cool. So what have you been up to this past year with COVID going on? How has it affected your gaming group or whatever? Did you normally go to conventions and stuff, or now you can't? Or
Yeah, I really enjoyed gaming conventions, and I've missed them quite a bit. I don't tend to travel too far for them, so it's pretty much only the California ones that I go to.
Sure.
But I do hope to make it out to Traveller Con one of these days. It is a goal of mine. But no, our weekly gaming group transitioned to online, which has its pros and its cons. But I am eager to return to live play, and since vaccines are proliferating, that's probably something that's going to be possible, by the end of summer.
Do you have any? Let's say the pandemic's over. What are your plans for the coming year? What are your first things you want to do, gaming wise?
We'll definitely return to live play, and definitely return to. So my hope is that the situation will be in control well enough for the Labor Day conventions to occur. I don't really know if that's going to happen, because of course these things have to be planned out so far in advance that they already, they may have already made the decision that they can't go through with it, as early as the start of the year.
Right.
So I don't, and I've actually not been as up as I should be on recent developments. So I should probably first thing I'm probably going to do after we hang up is check to see if there's been an announcement or not. But I really hope the Labor Day conventions are able to happen, because I miss gaming conventions a lot.
That prompted me to think about seeing if Ubanacon is going to be going on this year, and that's the local one down in Albuquerque that I try to hit every year. Nice sci-fi gaming convention.
Yeah. So I guess that's my big goal for if the pandemic could accommodate that, I would appreciate it.
Do you have any new card game expansions in the plans, or just gonna let it cook for a while?
No, so we are currently working on our next, what we call the mini ship packs. These are hosted on Drive-Thru Cards. They're sets of 11 cards. You get the ship, you get a couple of contract cards that are unique to it, and then you get a couple of what we call them captain's cards, but they're just the cards that you play with. They're like your crew and your gear, whatever. Just like what most people probably think of when they think of a card for the game.
Okay.
And then you get enough for a play set for all of those cards. So that's how it adds up to 11 cards. We're working on the lab ship as our next mini ship pack. We're going to be ready to go into playtest for that soon. And we're also working on our first errata pack. So we have cards that maybe the wording wasn't as clear, or cards that we want to fix. And our goal is to release the lab ship and the errata pack at the same time, so that people who are interested in both only have to buy them once for, they'll come at the same time, so they don't have to pay for shipping twice if they want them both.
Gotcha.
And then, of course, for the errata pack, the corrected cards would be available on our website. So if people wanted to print them out, they could do that instead, since these are cards that we want to fix. So we don't see why people should have to buy them twice. But if you did sort of want the card, you could buy them through the print on demand when they're available.
Gotcha. So, how can people get in touch with you? And do you have a social media, or what's your handle on what forums do you hang out on?
Yeah, so I'm on the Citizens of the Imperium forum. My gaming nickname is Leper Colony. When I was a kid, my uncle used to run a Robotech game for me and my brother, when we would visit my grandparents. My youngest uncle is actually pretty close, well, relatively speaking, kind of close to us in age.
Okay.
So he still lived with my grandparents when we would go over to visit
I see.
as kids. And so yeah, he would run this Robotech game for me and my brother, and we were just constantly failing in our missions, and our squad was sort of the loser squad, and we were called the Leper Colony, from 12 O'Clock High, and so that's just kind of the name I use for gaming stuff.
I see.
So I'm Leper Colony on the on Citizens of the Imperium forums. Of course, we have our own forums for the card game at TravellerCCG.com. We have entries on Board Game Geek for our products. I'm on the of course, I'm on the a couple of different Traveller Discords. I think usually is my actual name, Jeff Yin or Horizon Games. And also we have a Facebook page, and we have a Traveller CCG Facebook page. So yeah, I should be pretty easy to find if anyone's looking.
Great, cool. Well, Jeff, we've come to the end of our interview.
Well, it's been fun. I haven't done a ton of these, so hopefully I said something worth listening to, and I definitely appreciate the opportunity to come on.
A super interesting guest. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
So I'm your host, Frank Succardi, also known as CyborgPrime, and I've been talking with Jeff Yin of Horizon Games. Tell us one more time, where's the best place people can find your products?
So the best place is probably our website, TravellerCCG.com.
Great. Jeff, thanks so much for participating in our third annual Mayday Traveller Day event. I hope you'll join us again next year.
Thank you. I hope so too. Hopefully somebody will hear the Mayday and save us from the pirates, because as I recall, our situation isn't great. The turret's down, and I don't remember the whole text, but it was pretty bleak.
It is bleak. We've been calling for help for 40 years. Well, thank you, and thank you, dear listener, for joining us today. That's all for now, travelers. Until next time, happy traveling.